Hi guys, it's been a long day. I think we're only 2/3 through the judging processes. So let me just try to make it quick before we take a break. So basically my name is Wayne. I'm from Plug and Play and I'm based in Singapore. For those of you who don't know what Plug and Play does, I'll take maybe the first half of the presentation to describe about what we're doing, and then I'm going to talk about what we're doing in Singapore and explain a bit more of the Southeast Asia ecosystem. So what we try to do is, we think that we're building the ultimate startup ecosystem. We try to bring everything on the table to help startups focus on growth and scale. And we believe that basically innovation happens anywhere, anytime, to anyone. So you have to be in the right place at the right time. The story of Plug and Play started back in the 90s. So this is basically the super lucky building that we had on 165 University Avenue outside Stanford University. Basically, tenants of this space included Google, Logitech, PayPal, and Danger. So we would like to explain to everyone that our CEO actually chanced upon tech investments because the very first investment we made was in PayPal. Right? We took rent from them, and then in turn we put money in them, basically and then it grew through about 30 times when it got bought over by eBay. For those of you who don't know Danger, basically the makers of the world's first smartphone, it's called the T-Mobile Sidekick, and basically Danger was eventually acquired by Microsoft, and the founder of Danger is Andy Rubin. He went on to found Android, and basically at the time our CEO wanted to invest in Android. So our CEO made a call to Andy at the time, and basically on the call he said that, I'm sorry, we already been acquired by Google. So we also missed out on investing in Android after that. So this is basically a snapshot on our best performing portfolio companies over the years. On the left-hand side, you see basically companies that we are still active portfolio companies. On the right, companies that have already been exited. Our best performing guys have been Lending Club and PayPal. We did the first money into Lending Club back in 2007, and then they IPO'd at a value of $5.4 billion in 2014. So we believe that entrepreneurship is basically a combination of nature and nurture. So we try to bring, as I said, everything on the table to the startups. So in the US, we provide things like office space, data center services, IT services. We bring in mentors from our own internal team as well as external partners. We do co-invest with governments, with investment partners, with VCs, as well as through basically our funding quantum is basically anywhere between 25K USD to $500,000 USD. What we are actually strongest at is basically in terms of corporate innovation. We have more than 130 multinational corporate partners around the world at this point. So in short, what we do, we accelerate and invest in startups. We make startups and corporations. We provide flexible co-working space in certain locations only. And in the US especially, we host a lot of major industry events. Last month, we actually concluded 6 of our accelerator programs together over a 3-day period, which saw 150 startups pitch 3 minutes each over the 3-day period. So it was a crazy event. What we focus in the US is actually through industry verticals. And the reason why we do this is because of our corporate partners. We currently have 11 industry verticals running in the US, and for each vertical, we run 2 batches per year. The one that is not here, which is our newest program, is our logistics and supply chain program. In terms of corporate partners, half of our multinational corporations come from North America. A quarter of them come from Asia, and the others mainly come from Europe. Basically, this is a quick snapshot of partners under each industry vertical. Some of them are basically interested in multi-verticals, so they basically attend the selection processes and demo days for different programs. And usually, for each program, we have anywhere between 500 or 1,000 applications. We select only 20 startups to go through each program. And a quick snapshot of some of the later startups that have gone through our programs, more recent startups. Okay, so this is where we are around the globe. Predominantly, our activities are mainly still in Silicon Valley. We are actually fast growing in Europe because of our partners over there. For example, recently, this year, we started our first program in Paris with BNP Paribas, which is the largest bank in Europe. Our partnership in Stuttgart is with Mercedes-Benz. Our partner, and basically, we also have our own teams in places like Valencia. In Asia, we have about we have presence in 9 cities in China. We have a totally separate team that's handling China, so I don't really know what's happening over there right now. And the rest of, basically, we also look at Singapore, Jakarta, and our newest space in Tokyo. So a bit about Singapore and Southeast Asia. In Singapore and Jakarta, we have about 9 partners over there. The numbers listed here are a bit outdated, but we're running our first batch in fintech and mobile programs in Indonesia. We are in the call for applications for our startup Autobahn program in Singapore. I'll talk more about that later. And we also have quite a few different VC partners and corporation partners in Southeast Asia. So a quick snapshot on why Southeast Asia is attractive to you. Basically, the opportunity of growth is basically the growing middle class that can spend more in the tech space. And basically, out of all the Southeast Asian markets and the countries combined, we cover about 10% of the world population. So we should be the 5th largest economy in the world as a whole by 2018. Right? But in terms of growth, it's beautiful and very exciting, but it's not easy targeting Southeast Asia because the countries are very different culturally, language-wise, user behavior-wise, infrastructure-wise, regulatory-wise, it's all very different. So that's the problem tackling this region. So why Singapore? Right? A lot of companies use Singapore as a landing pad into Southeast Asia. The reason being that basically there's a lot of involvement and there's a lot of activity on the ground in the startups ecosystem in Singapore. Both the public and private sectors are actively promoting this space. Basically, infrastructure, political stability comes hand in hand. The government has been the same government for the last 50 years. You know, there's pros and cons around that, but for us, we basically like that everything is stable over there. There's a lot of government support in terms of helping tech startups start on the ground over there, or even traditional businesses taking up new technology. Singapore is also one of the easiest places to do business, and you know, it takes. Here it says 15 minutes, but basically, effectively, it's 1 working day to actually set up your own incorporation in Singapore, and as well as your bank account. So even if let's say for our program in Indonesia, the companies that we invest in, basically, we get them to incorporate in Singapore, and it's easy for investment money to go into the company. There's also basically strong IP laws that protects the companies. So just a quick introduction about this area in Singapore. We're located in a place called the JTC Launchpad. It's towards the west side of Singapore, and it's opposite the National University of Singapore. So what happened is that this area was actually meant to be demolished, you know, to bring in the bigger companies like LucasArts, broadcasters, Discovery Channel. But in the end, they put a stop to this demolishing project. The first building that accepted startups was Block 71. So they brought in the universities to run the space as community managers. They also brought in telcos to provide infrastructure and even investment support for the startups. And eventually, not just startups joined the space, they're investors, they're incubators, even foreign companies that actually took up office in this block. And because of that overwhelming demand, they moved on to Block 79, which is actually a former electronics factory. And instead of demolishing the whole place, they actually built up 4 new buildings to house different kinds of startups, and basically even hardware startups have spaces with the labs so that they can make use of it for product development and design. So I think you guys probably can't see this. You basically can Google for it online. It's actually created by the Action Community for Entrepreneurship in Singapore. This is basically a map of what's happening in Singapore right now. We have startups that is in every single vertical you can find there. And there are investors, there are universities, there are incubators, basically going straight into deeper zooming. Basically, these are the active incubators and accelerators in Singapore. On the left column, basically, is incubators that are in the general IT, ICT space. And the second column is basically accelerators in the healthcare space. The third one is fintech. So the top three logos are basically the acceleration programs by the three of the local banks in Singapore. The final one is basically incubators interested in clean tech, engineering, and a bit of construction. So I'd like to take the chance to do a call for applications for our Startup Autobahn program in Singapore. So this is our partnership that is extended from our partnership in Stuttgart. Right? But the difference is that Mercedes-Benz in Stuttgart looks for startups and technologies that can go in-car. Right? Because the R&D is actually pretty close by. So they're looking at technologies that can go into the production car. But in Singapore, Singapore is actually Mercedes-Benz or Daimler's APAC IT office, headquarters. So they're looking at IT solutions and products that can help with supply chain, in terms of pre-sales, post-sales, or technologies that even the distributors and partners can actually make use of. So if you're a startup in this area and you're interested in working with Mercedes-Benz, please try to apply on this particular website, startup-autobahn.sg. And there is no equity and investment involved for taking part in this program. Right now, I think the next batch is going to start sometime in September and October. The program will last 3 months. You have access to mentors even from the National University of Singapore and within the Mercedes-Benz team. And what Mercedes-Benz provide is basically a co-working space as well as a bit of compensation if you decide to run pilot projects or proof of concepts with them. What they do is they also sponsor like startup booths at a lot of the local and regional events. And for the first batch, they also flew the startups all the way up to Dubai to participate in their APAC IT forum. So this is a good chance to basically look for Mercedes-Benz as a potential partner or client. Okay, this is basically, I don't have much time left. This is basically what we have been doing in Singapore. Also an extension of our program in Paris. So we also help corporations like that look for startups through events like Hackathon. And basically what they're looking for is actually looking for startups, or mature startups, that are trying to solve virtual assistant problems or even big data in the security services problem. So what startups, the startup that won the virtual assistant problem statement was actually a team from South Korea. And the team that won the big data problem was actually a team that was a spin-off from National University of Singapore. So the teams basically get 10K Sing dollars, and then they get work with BNP Paribas in their innovation lab in Singapore for 5 months. And the aim is basically to launch an MVP at the end of this 5 months. The other one I like to promote is basically our Plug and Play Indonesian program. So this program was actually initiated by the Indonesian government, Indonesian president, when he visited us in Silicon Valley last year during the ASEAN-US meeting. So he decided to say that, he told us that he wanted a plug and play in Indonesia, right? So this is what happened 1 year later. So in Indonesia, we're partnered with 2 banks, 2 of the local banks, BNI and BTN, and Estra, which is a logistics distributor, as well as Cinemas, which is basically a conglomerate company. And the focus of this program is actually fintech and mobile. The potential is basically, Indonesia is a huge market. There's a lot of untapped space in terms of fintechs and payments and things like that. So we're currently in the middle of our first batch. The demo day is going to be in August, and then we're targeting the second batch to be starting October or November this year. So if you're interested in accessing the Indonesian market, we don't, during the first batch we had about 11 companies, but we didn't invest in all of them. We only invested in 6. So we do have more mature companies coming to us, and we don't take as much equity because we can't invest in them. Yep, so this is basically the team in Singapore and Indonesia. So if you have any interest, you can actually drop me an email at wayne@pnptc.com. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Wayne, for your wonderful presentation.